Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. The three, steps back, crossover, puts up a three. Rebound James. Second. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland, this is for you.
There is no one that enjoys matinee basketball quite like Evan Mobley. Welcome to another episode of the Block the Shot to Stop. I am Kevin Lynch here with Tim Daniel. Gonna just talk about the Cavaliers 116-102 victory to the Hornets. Game with a lot of storylines. Kind of game that went all over the place. The main storyline, Evan Mobley. So, of course, my first question, Tim, is the Charlotte Hornets starter jacket still the best jacket of all time?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Just want to get that on record. All right, let's talk about the game. Let's talk about Evan Mobley. You were telling me a couple of Evan Mobley stats about today's performance versus, his career. And I'll let you go ahead, take the floor, go ahead and share it with the audience.
Well, first things first, show some love where love's due. Yeah, buddy.
Oh.
Yeah, buddy.
We won't say or not if he was wearing that when the game started, but
no, it was not. But so today's obviously his career high, 41. Before that, he had a 30. I think he did 140 burger in his career before today. No, he had a 38 burger. Sorry.
Yeah.
So this is his first 40 burger. Obviously another double. I think that's now his 12th on the year. And before today, the most threes he'd ever taken in a game, Kevin, not shot, not made, taken, was 6. He made 6 threes today. So this was awesome. This was the kid that we saw in the AAU at the Compton Magic, and I heard people just are raving about. This is the kid that was the number one player in the country. You saw that kid today. This was a kid that I had scouts when I would go to games that I'd be covering in college games, and I'd be talking about them. They'd be like, when you see Evan Mobley, you are not going to believe this is a real basketball player. And we saw him be very good his first 3 years in the league. This is Evan Mobley being great. And today was an unreal step forward in this continuing maturation process. He's had an awesome week, and I don't think it's coincidental that how good he's been this week. The Cavs won 4 in a row.
You're 100% right. This is obviously we've sung the praises of Evan Mobley a lot on this show, and for good reason. He was a very good player coming into this year that is now taking giant strides towards stardom. None bigger than today. Just repeating them, even though Tim said it, like 41 points, 10 rebounds, 6 for 8 on threes. And really it came right away in the first quarter. He had 28 of it, the 41 were in the first half. And a lot of that 28 was in the first quarter. I don't have
25, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And he was, let's actually talk about that, Tim. What was different about today? Why did Evan Mobley come out uber aggressive today? Because that's kind of uncommon for him.
I think a big part of it was he knew he had the significant matchup advantage, right? I mean, look, I love Taj Gibson, but we all know that Taj Gibson is supposed to be on an NBA team for the sake of being a veteran leader. And with all the injuries the Hornets have had, he had to start today. So, and his assignment was Evan Mobley. So I'm sure part of that was probably Kenny being like, look, dude, this guy can't stop you from doing anything you don't want to do on the floor. So that was probably a big step. I think the other thing too was that I think he's just been really, really hot, and I had a lot of momentum. So before the game, even today, in the pregame show, there was this whole segment of all the players talking about this jump he's made already this year. Mm-hmm. So it's just really perfect that he had this game today after that whole story list where like George is talking about him and Donovan's talking about him and everyone who's saying, if you saw what he did in camp, we're not surprised how well he's played this year. And then he goes into today. He's just unbelievable. So yeah, I think playing against Taj Gibson, playing against the Cleveland Hornets team, I'm sure naysayers will find a way to point that out. But last we noticed, Kevin, those players also have the NBA patch on their jerseys as well.
They did. And trying to put a new spin on the same thing. I think as far as just the aggressiveness for matchup was some of it. I also just think it's the maturation of him. Like one of the last podcasts that you and I did, I was talking about the kind of the next step for him was forcing the action. Like, I am a star player. I'm going to force the action, which sometimes you need to do, whether it's the create fouls, play make for your teammates, all of those things. And he definitely, in a very positive way, forced the action, particularly in that first quarter. And then while his biggest contributions from the stat sheet were in the first half, I also thought he was really key in the second half and we'll get into the rest of the game, I should say, after this. But he was instrumental in every time the Hornets kind of made it close. He not only made a play or scored a basket, but he did it he did it with emphasis. He had some the Hornets went on an 8-0 run and it ended with a just hard putback dunk by Mobley, which is it does just count as 2 points, but basketball has a lot of momentum and emotion and all of these things in it. So dunking that hard on a team that is in the midst of a comeback can squash some of that, right? So and as I said, moving on, we'll come back to Evan because he was so phenomenal today. Looking at the game as a whole, the Cavs came out and were dominant in the first quarter, led obviously by Evan Mobley. I believe they had a 22-point lead at the end of the first quarter. I think it was 40-18.
Yeah.
Second quarter, the storyline almost flips. The Hornets outscored the Cavs 34-23 in the second quarter to make this a game. Mm-hmm. And then the second half, it was a little back and forth with the Hornets kind of kept making runs to close in on the Cavs. And right before they could get over that final hurdle to, tie or take the lead, the Cavs would answer. Or frankly, the Hornets missed some shots too that would have been able to do that. So setting all that up, Tim, what are your thoughts on the day? I guess two questions in one. What did you see when the Cavs were so dominant in that first quarter? And then what did you see that, in the play that kind of allowed the Hornets to get back into the game both from the Hornets side and from the Cavs side?
So I'll go with the Cavs first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when they were so dominant, it just goes back to what they've done all year. And the thing that we've just been really talking about, the things they do really well, they did. Man-to-man defense today was unbelievable. I mean, it was very physical. They were in your space. They didn't there wasn't many times that guys on the Hornets had wide open threes today or wide open shots in general. And that was just the Cavs playing their really physical defense, playing their brand of defensive basketball. I think that played a huge part. They were so good at sharing the ball again. I mean, today Mitchell had 8 assists and Mitchell, the playmaker, is almost as fun as Mitchell, the scorer, to watch. Mm-hmm. And so seeing him kind of do that. And I talked about this with Skylar the other night after the Nuggets game. Just his defensive effort. Like I said, we're never going to go on here and say that Donovan Mitchell should be an all defensive player on one of the teams by any means, but the effort he's giving has been such a game changer, because if your best player is playing that hard on defense and trying to attack what a lot of people say is his weakness, your whole team's going to get behind that. So I think that played a huge part, just sharing the ball, defensive prowess, and obviously their size advantage. On the Hornets end, I know that people look at their record, people look at their roster, they look at their injuries, and they find all the ways possible to kind of deplete them and take them down. But you, as someone who follows the league just as much as I do, know very well that Josh Green has been a really underrated player this year, mm-hmm. has had a really good year. And I've talked about it a million times. I love Brandon Miller as a basketball player. Mm-hmm. If I were the Hornets, and this would probably get me fired to say, I would build my team around Brandon Miller. I would not build my team around LaMelo Ball. I realistically think that Miller is a Paul George-esque talent offensively. I really believe he has that upside. And he can really just be that good of a player. But those two, and then just really good bench players. So Mark Williams, you and I were talking about this before we went on air, really good in his 10.5 minutes. I don't know why he only played 10.5 minutes. I understand Charles Lee's bringing him back from injury, but they, when they were making their run, he was playing really well. And then a guy that I wasn't very familiar with before today, so forgive me, is Jeffries for Charlotte.
Yeah,
Daquan Jeffries from Tulsa. Even though I did cover the American Athletic Conference for way too long. Those are dark times, Harry. Dark times. Daquan Jeffries was really good for them as well. 17-6, 7-11 from the floor, and this Micic character that they have, he's like a little bit of an older player. I should know more about
a little bit. He's a 30-year-old. Is it rookie or second year? I'd say so.
13, 5, and 7. So I think the Hornets did a really good job of really attacking when kind of executing their offense when they need to. Like I said, that's not a knock on the Cavs defense.
Mm-hmm.
Cavs did not give them a lot of easy shots today. It wasn't like, they would be in transition. You would just see a guy sitting in the corner by himself. But I think the Hornets did a really good job of sharing the ball. I thought they were physical in their runs. And I think for where they're currently at with the injuries they have, they did as well as they possibly could. It's just at some point, the fact that Cavs are everything but full strength and so much more talented than them just kind of took over the game.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of great points. A couple that I jotted down, I was going to kind of like elaborate on. Donovan Mitchell's defense, agreed. I think at times with Utah, he kind of was not as into defense, and maybe some of that was just being unhappy there and everything. For the most part with the Cavs, he's been solid defensively, but I do think he has upped his level of defensive intensity this year,
yes,
as you've said. And I think that is so important for the Cavs because they have an undersized backcourt, one of the most undersized backcourts in the league, probably, if I went around and looked.
You're right.
And with Darius Garland, someone who he's frankly even smaller and maybe he has even more defensive challenges than Donovan Mitchell does. Mitchell being so aggressive and focused on the defensive end is really a game changer for this Cavs team. And I do want to compliment him. And this whole week was a great response by Donovan Mitchell to that Hawks Hawks game that you and I covered. I think it was maybe the last one of these we did with you and I, when we talked about that was one of the rare games this year that he has forced the action and didn't have a shot going. And instead of recognizing that and moving more into playmaker status until he got going, that was one game he really forced. Today, he saw Mobley had it going. He was patient. He only took 3 shots in the first half. He was 2 for 3 in the first half, and then was aggressive at the right times in the second half when they needed him to be. So I really, really liked Donovan Mitchell's overall game, both on the defense and offensive end.
Yeah.
Also regarding the defense, I agree with everything you said, but the other thing that I've noticed they've done the last couple of games, which I feel like they went away from for a while, is mixing in a little bit more zone.
Yes.
They did quite a bit of that today. And against Denver as well, they did it some. So, and I like that. And I like that from Kenny Atkinson because it's strategic. Like you can always flip to a zone for a couple possessions. If they get 2 wide open threes, get out of it. Right. There's nothing, but I think the players in the NBA today are so talented and the offenses are so sophisticated that you have to try a little bit different things on defense to keep them going, right?
Yeah.
It's like going against a great quarterback in football. If you just are straight up man-to-man all day long, he's going to beat you. If you're straight up zone all day long, he's going to beat you. If you mix up what you're doing to at least cause them a little bit of confusion, if nothing else, they get into their offense later in the shot clock because you did something they weren't expecting. I really think that's an advantage and really like that Kenny went back to because he did a lot of that in the beginning of the year. And I don't know if I did this before. I want to give the players credit, whether you think this is right or whether it's right for this or not. NBA players do not like playing zone.
Right.
It is a pride. It is a pride thing.
Zone and full court press are not their favorite things.
Yes, for very different reasons. But zone is thought of as almost like what you think I can't go mano a mano with a guy. This is. But the Cavs, when they are in zone, they really seem focused and embrace it and play a very, very good zone. Particularly because they got Mobley and Allen so long that can take up so much space and kind of allow the guards to be a little bit more aggressive. So all that is good things. The one negative I saw today, and it's a trend we talked about a little bit the bench got outplayed again.
Yeah,
Like
it
they and if you looked at these two bench rosters going into the game, you're like, there's no way the Hornets bench outplays the Cavs bench, right? Like just based on personnel. And sure enough, the Hornets outscored them 35-21. As you called out, a lot of that was Mark Williams, Daquan Jeffries for the Hornets. To their credits, they had good games, but again, a little bit of a trend for the last several games is the Cavs seem to be getting quite as much from their bench. I understand Isaac Okoro was out today. That moves Dean Wade in the starting lineup. Dean, figure out your free throws. What's going on, dude? Like, come on.
That's shocking.
That it really is. Like,
and not just because he's a white guy in the NBA who's
no,
realistically, like,
it's shocking that anyone in the NBA would be shooting 30% from free throw line, let alone someone who's a good 3-point shooter. So yeah, they were a man down today, and they've been down, a starter all year in Max Strus, but I still think a lot of these matchups, on paper look advantageous for the Cavs in the bench department, but when at the end of the game you look and, we've been getting outplayed on the bench a lot more this last week or two than we did the first month of the season.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at the Nuggets game, if Karis LeVert doesn't have the game he had, they got outplayed again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I really am curious once they get Max back what the bench looks like per se. Kenny said yesterday, I guess Max is officially taking physical contact in practice now, which is good news. And he basically, what he said was really interesting to me when he said that when they get him back, it's like getting a starting player, signing a starting player as a free agent is what he compared it to. So that's really interesting.
Going into your Royal House, that is really a Cincinnati Reds front office move. Is that getting this guy back from injury is just as good as making a trade?
Yes, it is.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hilarious. Actually, you say that.
But yeah, go ahead.
But I think that that's kind of surprising. Tomorrow they have Miami, who has a decent bench as well. And that's a game you have to be up for no matter how good the Heat are. And I know we'll touch on that towards the end of the show. But I have been genuinely shocked. And Ty Jerome obviously was battling illness for a little bit, but he's had a couple not Ty Jerome games of late. I think George defensively has played pretty solid for a week now. I know he's had up and down offensive performances. We talked about the Celtics game. He was really good, but I just think it might just be one of those lulls. I think that happens with everybody. And we talk about this all the time with the NBA. Like, yeah, your team's getting to lose 2 in a row on occasion. And the Cavs just did before they went on this 4-game win streak. So it happens. So I think I don't worry about it. Now, if it's 12, 13 games of like 12, 13 of 18 or 19 that they're going through this, they will have a conversation. But I'm not freaking out about it yet.
Yeah, I'm not freaking out either, but it is something to monitor, and it is something to really look at once Max comes back. As you said, guys' minutes are going to change. There may be a guy or two in the rotation now that's not as much in the rotation when that happens. Yeah. Even our beloved TJ Maxx, if he is still struggling, that you could see him being one of the guys who gets his minutes reduced a little bit. He did only play 12 minutes today. And to the bench's defense, I will say they didn't take a ton of shots today because Mobley was so great and was dominating so much of the attention. Like, no one on the bench took more than 6 shots. A lot of the guys took 1, 2, 3. So, there wasn't as many opportunities today, I will say, because particularly Mobley was so strong, and like kind of rounding out the coverage on the rest of the team. Like, Mitchell and Garland, both solid today. I would say both with 18 points. As you said, Mitchell had 8 assists. Garland had 5. Mitchell shot really well from the floor. Darius struggled a little bit from the 3-point line. He was a little bit better, with his floaters and everything today than he has been so outstanding on 3-point shooting to the season to date. But most of all, I give Mitchell and Garland credit for, being a little bit patient today. When you're a star NBA player, there's always the tendency that I haven't shot in 4 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, I got to get one up kind of thing. They really did let Evan cook today, and Darius took 16 shots, but a lot of those he was in the rotation, or he often is in the rotation where he's on the floor when Mobley's on the bench. And so I think he was trying to assert himself in those pockets of time. Anything that you kind of saw with Mitchell and Garland today in addition to that?
Kind of different. I did, but kind of different in the sense of strategy. Camaraderie was awesome between those two today. So there's a play, I think, in the first quarter. I don't remember the exact time. I meant to write it down. Garland gets a layup and draws a foul. And Mitchell's kind of like towards the half court line at this point. And it's just something I noticed real quick. It's just something that like nerd people like you and I look at that just really love about basketball is Mitchell is like celebrating like he just like put off a 10-0 run. He has like a pump. He's skipping. He's really excited for Darius. And I think that was just really cool. Like just the way that those two dudes, like all the drama and like reports that came out about those guys that you heard, the apparent stuff, just seeing how much they really complement each other and how much they like playing together. The whole team in general, it's been really cool. But, and if this is too far in the weeds here, Kev, please stop me. But I think one thing about Mitchell, it's super underrated. So you look at you look at 8 rebounds. How many of those are long rebounds he's chasing down? I mean, I think that is like a super underrated skill. And people just look at Donovan Mitchell as this, you know, he's this great talent. He can do all these wonderful things, and he certainly can. That's not what I'm saying here at all. But I think that's a really underrated thing that and I understand he is really fast, but just the ability to chase down long rebounds and help your team kind of get the break going quicker, I think is something that we don't talk enough about in his skill set.
You're right. And first of all, you're right that is a skill. I think that's part of the reason Evan Mobley is such a good rebounder, because he's so long and can grab some of those that are coming off the rim hard, because let's face it, like there's so many 3-point shots, and 3-point shots create longer rebounds. And so it is almost like a newer skill, or maybe a skill that's of more importance in today's game, is being kind of very smart positionally and very athletic enough to get to those long rebounds. As great of rebounds there was, I don't think Chuck Barkley is getting nearly as many rebounds in the game today, when the rebounds are actually coming 15 feet away from the hoop. Right. So no, I now that you say that, I didn't necessarily think of that, but that is, you're right. He does chase down a lot of long rebounds, and that is really valuable, because frankly, long rebounds usually equals higher probability of an offensive rebound and them getting another possession. No, it's really good. Well, before we wrap up today's game and look to tomorrow against Miami, I did want to talk to you about the real star of the game, because we definitely know he needs a shine. I want to talk to you about Tony Brothers.
Hell yeah.
And the Cavs with an unrealistic 3 technicals today. Was 3 the final counts?
Yes.
I know there's at least 3. There was a officials review where they never went to the monitor, never talked to anyone, and
Mitchell's like in the background, just
held
like
up the game for 2 minutes and then just restarted.
Even Brandon Miller's like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Based on his historic career, how would you rate Tony Brothers today?
Oh, this is Ed Hockley levels of making sure the camera's on today. That was when Tony Brothers was on. I love Tony Brothers just because he is pure entertainment, but he is for sure the referee who loves making sure people know about him the most.
Yes, he certainly does, and he's funny because I think in his head, like, all the players are like his best friends and they get along so well. And I think it's pretty much only in his head. Like he's the guy. I'm not going to repeat it, but there's the famous story that Jason Terry told on Club 520 about Tony Brothers, and when his mother and sister sat courtside.
Oh yeah,
in the game.
Jeff Teague. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jeff Teague. But yeah, like end of games can be tough in the NBA, because it's tough in the NBA because even diehards like you and me we understand what the right strategy is and how important every call is at the end of the game, but the constant stop and start can be difficult to watch. And I understand why people say
For sure.
a lot of the criticisms about today's NBA, I think, are misplaced, but like the one where the end of games take so long, I think is legitimate.
Yes.
And we really, they really need to employ referees that want to get everything right as quickly as possible. And they need to have, like what the NFL instituted this year with like the replay assistants that just calls down to the head ref and says like, hey, you got that one wrong, just change it, don't do a review. Like that's what they need.
I totally agree.
They need a fourth official, like whether it's in New York or in the press box, who's reviewing the calls, and anything that can be quickly changed, they quickly change it. An out of bounds that was clearly off one guy, but they called the ball the other way. It's just a little bit of a struggle, and I don't love Tony Brothers. Maybe that's the difference between positive Tim and doing Kevin.
I should say my love of Tony Brothers is not that I think he's talented at his job. I just think he's hilarious.
Yeah. He is the most important person in the NBA.
Exactly.
You just need to ask him, right?
Yeah, right.
So, all right. Well, we gave him his shine. Let's wrap up. They got Miami tomorrow before maybe their longest break of the season, 4 full days off before a game next Friday. That is due to the NBA Cup, and the Cavs unfortunately not qualifying for the NBA Cup. It's the only thing they didn't do well this year so far, really. And because of that, they got 2 games added to their schedule, but they do have quite a break where they're off a good part of next week. So we'll really just focus on the Heat game here real quick. Anything about tomorrow's game other than the quick turnaround off of a back-to-back? They've been playing every other day before this. Just for me, the biggest thing is it is just being focused, being refreshed, getting contributions from the bench, because you may want to tick back on the starters' minutes a little bit tomorrow. I think, all year we've had people's minutes being down, but I think Donovan was over 36 today. Mobley was about the same. So that, I guess I gave my key first is a little bit more of a balanced attack with the bench getting really involved tomorrow, Tim. Like anything, I guess, that you see, whether it's from the Cavs side or the Heat side?
From the Heat side, from the Cavs side, it's don't let the Cavs don't let the Heat defense get set.
Mm-hmm.
If they set their defense, if you do not speed them up, they're going to make it a very long day for you. They're very slow. They are like they literally play at the slowest pace of anyone in the league, and they're 6th in defense. They are super physical, and they love just getting to their spot and just disrupting your offense. They love that they can just slow you down and keep you moving the ball and run out the shot clock to the bare minimum. So if you're Cleveland, your advantage has to be transition, obviously, like you've done really well all year, and just finding a way to score before they get comfortable and they get set, because that's where they beat you. Offensively, they're not very good. And I say that lightly because I know that anytime Jimmy Butler wants to turn it on, he can be very special. You lived in Chicago for quite a long time during his Bulls tenure. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And he's one of my all-time favorite players. So I know that, and I know a lot of people just think that it's playoffs only, but he has those nights. So you want to make sure he doesn't have one of those nights. But this is a team that realistically Cleveland's better than, and they should have another night where they beat them. But they just have to make sure that they can beat their defense, because their defense will give Cleveland so many fits. And I'm very excited on the Miami side to see who do they match Bam up with more, because a Bam Mobley, for like nerds like you and me, that's like basketball. That's like a basketball blast. But Mobley, Bam versus Allen would still be fun to watch, but nowhere near as fun. So I'm really curious to see how Miami uses Bam in this game.
Yeah, no, that's a great call. And I think you're right. I think they're going to put Bam on Mobley because Bam is one of the best and most athletic, like big man defenders in the league, and has been for a long time. It's becoming apparent. There's been a really big trend in the last few weeks that more and more of the offense going to Mobley and less going to Allen. Allen score is way.
He did have
down.
a double today, but yeah.
But I think I was looking at, the first 4 weeks of the season, he was averaging like 16 points. And then the last like 3+ weeks, he was averaging like 11. So Jared Allen, and that's not anything like, I don't even think this is anything real wrong with Jared Allen. I think
I don't think he has any
flowing.
issues with that information.
Well, and I don't think I think the offense is flowing the other way. Let's be honest. A lot of Jarrett's offense is predicated on penetration and dishing to him, right? Yes. He's not a traditional back to the baskets guy who I think he actually has some really nice like post and hook moves. They're just, it's not a big part of the Cavs offense.
Right.
But Mobley has obviously really increased his offense. So I would be really surprised if they didn't have Bam focus on Mobley pretty much the whole game, unless he got in foul trouble. Then I could see him moving off of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, they are. I think you said it with the Miami's like pace and everything. Like the Cavaliers have done a good job of this all season, but like make them play your game versus you play theirs. Like exactly. if this is a game where both teams are scoring less than 110 or less than 105, something like that, like I think the Heat have a very good chance to win. If the Cavs score 115 or more, I think they win this game. No problem. So I think you're right. Not that the Cavs are excellent in transition. They're not one of the fastest teams in the leagues, but tomorrow might be a game that you want to look to push the pace a little bit more if you're the Cavs.
Feels like a good Darius day. Feels like a day where he's going to be very, 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 very important.
Yeah. He could be, because they don't have any like good matchups. I mean, for him,
Scary Terry's their best one, probably.
Yeah, probably.
Unless they put Butler on him.
Yeah.
But I think he'll guard Mitchell.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. And I don't even think as good a defender as Butler is, and he's obviously slowed a little bit at this point in his career. Garland's not the type of guy he would be an excellent defender against. Like he doesn't like, he's better when he can get in and be physical with somebody, like somebody his size or bigger. So I wouldn't expect Butler to be on him. I could see Darius, you're right, going up against Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson when he's in the game, and
there's also like barbecue chicken for Garland.
Yeah, could be a game that Garland could feast and may want to be a little bit aggressive looking for his opportunities. Yeah. All right. Well, with that, this matinee Saturday. I don't know. What do you think about matinee basketball, Tim?
Love it, man.
Yeah,
love it. Love that. Like, especially for us, since we do a daily show. Well, every game show. Some weeks it is daily. Yeah. Is that we have the whole day with our families now.
Yeah.
So I think that part's really cool. I know my wife is very excited. I can do some stuff with the family tonight, so they're looking forward to it. Before we close out, can I just say one quick thing?
Please.
Okay. So it was announced today. Someone from my local area is going to now be a member of the Cleveland Charge. So I want to make sure I give a shout out to Sean McNeil from Cooper High School, former West Virginia and Ohio State guard, played for Huggins at West Virginia, played for Chris Holtman for a year at Ohio State. But one of my favorite high school players I've ever seen play. I mean, had a clip. So he has just signed the deal with the Cleveland Charge. So I'm hoping maybe we can get him to come hang out on the pod in the near future, but that was cool. I could have a local tie to the Cavs since we are not in Cleveland. So want to make sure I gave some love.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, you shared that with us earlier, and we'd love to have Sean on and wish him all the best with the Charge. Hope he has a ton of success. So much so that maybe the Cavs call him up if they need some reserves at some point in the year. But yeah, no, we certainly welcome him to the Cleveland basketball family. So. With that, for Tim Daniel, I am Kevin Lynch. We're going to wrap up here another episode of The Block, The Shot, The Stop. And thanks for listening.
Go Cavs.